All right, it's 101. Let's go ahead. Welcome everybody here and listening to Clemency 101. FAMM is absolutely honored to be here today and to introduce Senator Sharif Street, who represents the 3rd Senatorial District of Philadelphia. Senator Street, as many of you already know, is an absolute champion for criminal justice reform. He has introduced powerful, meaningful bills in the Senate to reform life without parole, create medical and geriatric release opportunities, and we are really lucky to have him here today. We are also joined by Philadelphia Councilmember Cinby Bass, who represents Philadelphia's District 8. She is a tireless fighter for quality of life issues in Philadelphia. She is known for her dedication to coalition building and is always working, as today, to make sure that her constituents are informed about these issues and well represented. Lastly, we're joined by Board of Pardon Secretary Celeste Trusty. Secretary Trusty was appointed by Lieutenant Governor Fetterman and Governor Wolf in January to take over this important office. She is passionate as an advocate for transforming Pennsylvania's legal system and previously served as FAMM's Pennsylvania State Policy Director and Regional Organizer. She's worked for years to expand clemency in Pennsylvania, and we are just thrilled and proud that she is in this role. So to kick us off, we'd love to hear from Senator Street and then from Councilwoman Bass. Thank you.
Well, look, I want to thank everybody for participating. Thank you, Secretary Trusty, for the work you're doing now and the work you've done for years as an advocate. And now you're the secretary, so you're going to make a lot of this happen. I want to thank all the folks from FAMM who have joined us as well. I want to thank my partner in governance, Councilwoman Bass, and I represent literally hundreds of thousands of the same people. And I want to thank her for the work and the leadership she's doing. She had been doing expungement clinics, and I talked about, and her staff said, we have people who keep needing things that go beyond expungements. You think we could get something going around pardons? And I said, we've done before. I would be happy to partner with you. So I want to thank her for her leadership and helping make this happen today. Look, pardons allow people to clear the records in ways that an expungement won't. A clear record allows people to obtain a job, support a family, and be a more productive citizen and give back. And we should be doing what we can to make sure there's an appropriate review. People have an access to get pardons. Commutations and clemency are some of the only ways that people have reformed themselves inside of the prison system that have either very long sentences or serving life have a chance to get released. We need to make sure we are giving people the information to avail themselves of these opportunities. It allows people on the inside some hope that they can get better, people on the outside something to strive towards to make their lives a little bit easier, and families of those people a way to contribute to help them get things together. And so I want to thank everyone who is working on these issues to making this happen, make this call happen, and to make sure that deserving people can get the second chance they need and deserve. And so with no further ado, it is my pleasure to present to some and introduce to others a tireless champion for people who need help, a person who works day and night and who is a leader in the city of Philadelphia and has helped the city become a shining example of what we can do around second chances. The Honorable City Councilwoman Cinby Bass.
Well, thank you, Senator. I have to say that introduction is wonderful. Thank you so much. He's such a sweetheart. He's a good friend. And, beyond being a friend, he's really been a partner. It's so important that in government, we have these partnerships, that we're working together to solve the people's problems. And I'm just so proud that Senator Sharif Street is not only such a friend for a very long time. I'm not going to date either one of us with how far back we go, but been a longtime friend and really a strong supporter and a good person that we have been able to connect with through our offices, through our work, really through the mission of what it is that we're trying to accomplish for all of our constituents. I want to thank you all for having me today. This is an issue that's really, really important to me and really to my constituents. We have returning citizens coming back into our district, into our city every single day. It's not just on Mondays or Tuesdays or Saturdays, it's every single day. And so when folks return, we need to make sure that we have every possible opportunity, every possible strategy in place, employed funded, so that they can really have a real opportunity to turn their lives around. And so that's what this is all about for me. I am a strong supporter of pardoning and clemency and all the things, all the tools in the toolbox that are really going to give people that second chance that they need to be able to get their lives back on track. And that's what this system is really supposed to provide, is a correctional system. It's supposed to provide opportunities so that folks can change the path in which they were on before and move different in the future. So I'm really excited about what's going to be presented today. I'm looking forward to learning even more about these topics so that we can take it back to our constituents and make sure that they know and that they have all of the information at their disposal in terms of what can help them and how we can spread the word about these resources that are desperately needed in communities. So thank you so much for having me. I'm just pleased and proud to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue, so much for joining us. Secretary Trusty, any remarks?
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the Senator. Thank you, Councilwoman Bass, for everything that you all do on this important topic and for co-hosting this important event. I think one of the biggest things we have to do is to educate folks about the availability of this process. So many people don't even know that this process even exists, or that they're eligible to apply for a pardon. But pardons and commutations can change lives, as so many people on this call have probably experienced or are hopeful that it will change their lives. As our lawmakers on the call have heard, I'm sure, from their constituents, how important a second chance is. And we see how incredible. I mean, you look at Philadelphia and how many people are returning to the community and making our community stronger with their second chances, coming home and mentoring our youth, and doing things like helping people who are unhoused, helping feed people who need food, and just going out into their community and repairing harm that they have done. And that is something that is so beautiful. And so I thank everybody on this call for attending and taking the time out of your day to learn more about clemency. And thank you to everybody on the call who is co-hosting to really bring this topic to our community members. And I think it's so important. So I'm excited to talk about clemency here today in Pennsylvania. I'm so honored to serve as secretary. It's a wonderful thing. I've worked so closely with so many people on this call previously, trying to reduce excessive sentences. So it's wonderful to be back in this role to talk about clemency today. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much to everybody for those awesome introductory remarks. I want to tell everyone a little bit about FAMM and set the stage for what we're going to talk about today, including what clemency is and isn't, and then we'll really dive into the 101 portion of the program. And also, just to make everybody aware, we're going to get through our portion, and we have saved at least the last 30 minutes of today for questions, because last time we did a Clemency 101 webinar in February, which was similar but different to today's program, we had so many questions that we didn't have time to get to. So today we really wanted to have time to be able to interact with everybody listening in the chat and in the Q&A portion, and try to get to as many of your questions as we can. So FAMM, many of you are probably aware, FAMM is here in Pennsylvania. I'm putting a link to all of our work in Pennsylvania in the chat. And generally, most of our work revolves around always needing to oppose mandatory minimums, which are always being threatened with coming back in Pennsylvania and have been a real driver of mass incarceration here. And then proactively, offensively, we're always working on our second chance agenda, which is ending automatic life without parole, expanding clemency, ding, 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 and creating medical and geriatric release opportunities. So if you're interested in learning more about FAMM, please sign up for emails at famm.org. Look at this link that I put in the chat. And just to set the stage of why this is so important, why are there legal mechanisms for, clemency, commutations, pardons, expungement, sealing? Because mass incarceration in Pennsylvania has been on the rise for 40 years. And so we've been going up, 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 up in terms of how many people are not just in prison, but also put on probation and parole on supervision of some kind, or even, get time served, no further penalty, community service, still results in a criminal record, still have that interaction with the court system. So we have really had this increasing number of people over decades and decades, regardless of the sentence, still impacts their life. And we're also, unfortunately, a national leader in extreme sentencing, And FAMM's recent report that we looked at sentences of over 20 years. We are really a national outlier in that. We put more people away for life with no opportunity for relief or parole than most jurisdictions in the United States and the world. So we're one of only 6 states that offers no parole opportunities for lifers. We really are not normal in what we're doing in Pennsylvania. And we've kind of been swimming in that for a long time. And I think now folks are starting to see and understand, and it's coming to the forefront. We can't do that anymore. So in that backdrop of extreme sentencing, you know, we have millions and millions of people in Pennsylvania with criminal records. It harms their ability to get housing, benefits, jobs, schooling, you know, grants for schools, scholarships, you name it, it affects it. So today we are here to talk about clemency. But first I want to make sure, because both Senator Street and Councilwoman Bass hear a lot from their constituents about not fully understanding all the different processes that people have in Pennsylvania to impact their record or impact their sentence. So I want to distinguish first, before we start, about clemency, and then see what sealing and expungement is, which is not clemency. So clemency is the umbrella term for the governor's special power to intervene in a case. So we have the legislative branch. Senator Street is in our state legislature. They make the laws. Then we have the judicial branch, courts, which oversee individual cases. Courts impose sentences. Then we have our third executive branch, which is the governor and the governor's staff, and all the heads of the different departments in government. The governor doesn't have to, but the governor can intervene to reduce a sentence, which is commutation, or forgive a conviction, which is a pardon. This is different. This is a different legal process than sealing or expungement. So they're not the same thing. Clemency covers pardons and commutations. That's what it covers. There are a few other lesser known things like reprieves, but for our purposes today, what 99 people out of 100 need to know about is that clemency covers pardons and commutations. Sealing, limited access records. You might hear about something called, hey, can I get my records sealed? Can I have it hidden from public view? This thing called sealing or limited access law, clean slate. These are all terms for the same sealing mechanism. This will seal your record to the public, close it off from view, but it doesn't get rid of it. It's still accessible to police, prosecutors, maybe even on an internet background check if the companies that do those background checks had swept the internet before your record was sealed. And for most of the time, sealing will happen automatically. So one kind of easy free way to test this is if you know you had like a summary offense, a disorderly conduct, or somebody that you know did, right? You know that somebody had that or you had it. You can go to the Pennsylvania public docket system, and I'll put a link for this in the chat. It's called the UJS portal. You can go to this, look up that case, and if you don't see it in there, but you know that it existed, you're gonna know that was sealed. Okay, and I've done this. Like I've looked up cases where I actually personally represented the person at trial. We got an acquittal, we won, great. I'm like, I know that case happened. I was there, I was the lawyer. And then I go back and look and it's not there. That's because it was sealed. So for the most part, that happens automatically, which is great. Millions of Pennsylvania's records have been sealed. You may not even know that your record was sealed. You don't automatically get notification. So you're going to want to check with your clerk of courts in the county of conviction or on this UJS docket. I would probably do both just to be safe. But check that and see. If you think you should have been sealed, but you weren't, you can, look for help with that. And we're going to talk about in a minute some places you can go to seek help with that. Sealing is going to apply to your low-level misdemeanors, maybe some M2s, mostly M3s, minor retail theft, some DUIs, prostitution, disorderly conduct, kind of more minor stuff like that. If you think you have something that's right on the line, I want you to go talk to somebody about that. That is, and again, that is not clemency. That is sealing. That's called limited access, clean slate. Those are all terms for this sealing. Okay, hope everybody's with me so far. We're going to get to Celeste in just a moment. The next thing that you might hear about is expungement. Expungement is also another way that Pennsylvania has to try to clear your record. And if you get your record expunged, it means that it is basically gone. It's kind of like an annulment. like a marriage being annulled instead of divorced. It means that, you know, technically you can act like it never happened. You don't have to report it on applications for jobs or housing. Now, we all know that sometimes places get a little fresh and will be like, even if your case was expunged, you know, we still want you to ask it. Legally, you don't have to if it's expunged. It's like it didn't happen, you don't have to report it. Primarily, expungement is going to apply to cases that didn't result in a conviction, like the case was dismissed, you won at trial, it was withdrawn, null pros, you got ARD, which doesn't result in a conviction. Maybe it was a summary offense. You know, if you haven't been in trouble for like 5 years after that, you might be able to get it expunged. And if you're 70 or over and you haven't been in trouble for 10 years, you can also apply to get it expunged. Big difference from sealing. Sealing is usually automatic. Sometimes you can apply, like, again, if you think you're on the line, you need to apply because it wasn't automatic, you can do that. Expungement is never automatic. You always have to apply with the court, file a motion. Community legal services in Philadelphia. You all are blessed in Philadelphia compared to a lot of other places in the state that FAMM works with to have organizations like the Philadelphia Defender, Community Legal Services, Philadelphia Lawyers for Social Equity, which goes by Pulse. I'm going to put links for all of this in the chat. They all to some degree work on these issues and can refer you, help you, you know, have you come to a clinic if you think you apply or qualify for one of those things. So I'm going to put links for those civil legal aid places that can help you with expungement and sealing in the chat. And please save those. And again, expungement and sealing is not clemency. So Celeste, Trusty, the Secretary of the PA Board of Pardons. Clemency covers pardons and commutations. And Celeste, I just want to ask you for the record, does your office handle expungements and sealings?
We do not. We
Okay.
do not. So our office, and thank you very much, Maria, for giving that really good explainer about those two different options, because again, it is a little confusing. So the Board of Pardons office, what we handle is clemency. And as Maria mentioned, clemency is the umbrella term that deals with commutations or pardons. So that's what you would come to our office for. If you have a criminal conviction, and it's on your record, but you're home, you're living your best life, and you just want to get that charge off of your record, and you want a pardon for that, you would apply for a pardon. That's the governor saying, hey, it's full forgiveness for something that has already been charged, and there you go, that's a pardon. A commutation is a reduction of a sentence. So if you're incarcerated or your loved one is incarcerated and you're looking to have that sentence reduced and have that person have relief a little bit earlier, you would apply for a commutation. Also, if you're home but on supervision, you can actually apply to have your supervision commuted as well. So there are a couple different ways that you can apply through the Board of Pardons, but we do clemency, which is the umbrella term, again, for commutations and for pardons.
Thank you so much. And is there anywhere else? I know, you know, we are, I think we do have some attendees from around the state. I think today we have primarily Philadelphia folks, but we do have some people from around the state. If someone called your office, Celeste, and they were saying, you know, and you kind of realized, oh, okay, they're really interested in one of these other things like expungement and sealing, is there anywhere else that I haven't mentioned or anything else that you would suggest people look into or who they talk to?
Absolutely. And I put in the chat earlier, the Board of Pardons website. I'll make sure I put it throughout the webinar also, but the Board of Pardons website does have a couple great links to different resources that you can look for, but also you can search for your area of the Commonwealth and see if there are any legal aid resources. As Maria mentioned, in Philly, there is kind of, you're lucky there, right? There's some incredible organizations really working on this. But there are some great pardon projects as well that are run through Pulse that are popping up across the Commonwealth because they realize there are so many counties that are without those resources and without that help, but people still need that help. So definitely look to see if there's a pardon project. Now, they don't do commutations, but they do pardons. A pardon project popping up in your county. You can even reach out to Pulse and see if they're looking at starting a pardon project in your county, and you can Google legal aid resources in your area too. Some places do more than one county, but I know that there are a lot of folks who are trying to establish legal aid resources across the Commonwealth.
Awesome, thank you. I want to take a step back for a moment, and we're going to get into step by step how to apply for clemency, be it a pardon or commutation. But I want to just take a step back. We know from our discussion a few minutes ago, you know, clemency, this umbrella term, covers pardons and commutations. It's the executive power, not the legislature's power. It's not the court's power. It is the governor and the governor's staff power. Can you tell us where your office is situated? Do you work for the governor? And just about your office and the board and how that interfaces with this process.
Sure. So the Board of Pardons is set up as kind of a check and balance system so that the governor, yes, they do have that authority to intervene in cases, but so that that power doesn't go kind of unchecked. So the Board of Pardons kind of acts as that first step before a person would go to the governor to ask for clemency. And so what we do is when people want to apply for clemency, they send the application to our Board of Pardons office. We have an incredibly dedicated staff at the office that processes the application. We answer questions from folks all the time, and we do all of the work there. So we at the Board of Pardons office, we are not the board. So once an application starts to get processed and filed, then largely you would go for a merit review before the board. That's kind of that first step when you go see the board. The Board of Pardons is made up of 5 people. So it's always going to be the lieutenant governor who chairs the board. And that's technically who I work for. And then you have the attorney general, who's always going to be on the board as well. And then there are 3 board members. You've got a correctional expert, you've got a doctor of psychiatry, I believe it is now, and then you also have a victim representative on the board. So there's always going to be 5 members of the board unless there's a vacancy or an absence. And so folks go up and basically the board will first at a merit review take a look at somebody's case and say, yes, this person should get a public hearing, or no, this person shouldn't get a public hearing. If a person is granted a public hearing, then they get to go before the board again and actually get a chance to represent their case. And if you're incarcerated, often the board will get a chance to interview you. And the board really does look at the totality of the situation whenever they're about to make a decision. And then after a public hearing, the board votes on whether they want to recommend a case to the governor or not. The board does not make the decision on if a person gets clemency. That is the governor. So the governor doesn't have to accept the board's recommendation. There have been times where the board has recommended clemency for a person, but after the governor's review, the governor denies. But the board will recommend or deny. And if an application is recommended, then it goes up to the governor's office for their review. And then at that point, the governor can act. And once the governor signs, then you get if you get acted and the governor signs, you get a lovely charter in the mail, which is some of the best things I think for our office to see is when the governor acts and we're able to actually send people second chances in the mail and know that their lives are about to be changed.
That's amazing. Yeah, I bet that's fantastic to send and for people to get. That's wonderful. I want to go back to the beginning and just kind of just go through that step by step and ask some common questions that we have about the process. So, okay, so first thing, the process that you just went through, is that the same for pardons and commutations?
Yeah, same process. So we also have a couple different situations where, say, if you have a low-level nonviolent weed charge, sometimes you can go through the expedited program, but everybody who applies for clemency, whether you're applying for a commutation or you're applying for a pardon, you go through the Board of Pardons office and we're the one who handle your application.
Okay, so if I want to apply, if I'm listening right now and I'm at home, with access to the internet, or can get access to the internet at my library, how do I apply? Do I call you and ask for an application? Is it available online? What do I do?
It's available online, and we actually have a brand new application as of January 1st. That's a little more streamlined and makes it easier for folks to apply. You can go on our website. Like I said, I put it in the chat, but it's www.bop.pa.gov. So I'll say it again because I stumbled there, bop.pa.gov. And you can actually find all the instructions on how to apply. So it lists all the documents that you're going to need to get when you apply. The actual application is right there as well. So you can download the application and fill it out. We're trying to streamline it and make it more simple for folks. But very easy instructions there. Send it into the board. Once you send your application in, you'll get a letter from us saying that we got your application. Once it's filed, you'll get another letter from us saying that it's filed. And so that's how you start.
And what do I need to file the application? Is that all in there? Do I need paperwork? Do I need money to file it? Do I need letters, supporting letters from my family, from my judge? Like what do I need to submit that
Sure.
application?
So no money is needed, which is wonderful. That is a new change that this board has undertaken, where there is not a fee to apply for clemency. There used to be a fee, which is cost prohibitive, for so many folks who are just looking to get a second chance to, have higher education opportunities, to expand their career opportunities, right? Or even, a $25 fee if you're incarcerated is just completely unattainable for so many folks. And so it's now free to apply. You don't need an attorney either. You can apply on your own. Again, if you need legal aid, you can try to find a legal aid resource or a pardon or expungement clinic that are being put on. And so it really is, much more simple now. So yeah, go on our website. The resources are there. If you have any questions, you can call our office. We'll be able to answer them. But we've done everything we can to try to put as many resources as possible for everybody on our website. So it's a little more self-explanatory for folks, but no money is needed. You will need court documents, but we list everything that you need online. So you can go down to the clerk of courts, take that document, that checklist, so you know what you need to submit. As far as letters of, support, absolutely. You can submit those with your original application, but no, you can always also continue to submit those throughout the process. So, when you first submit your application, I wish I could say it was a 1-month turnaround and you'll see the board. That's not the case, right? So when you first submit your application, understand you can continue to submit those letters of support throughout the process, right? So say you've completed a new program and you wanted to make sure that the board was able to see that certificate of completion. Make sure you send a copy of that to the board. We'll make sure it gets into your file. If you're doing some incredible community service work or, being a part of an organization or anything like that, or you have a letter of support from a great community member that is really willing to help you through the process, definitely go ahead and submit those to us throughout the process. They're very helpful and the board does look at those.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And I do want to encourage people to think creatively about their applications. One thing we know that Senator Street, Councilwoman Bass, they are clearly, by today and asking us to do this presentation today, they care about their constituents and want them to have access to this type of services. So if they are your lawmakers or whoever your lawmakers are, you are supposed to be, and you can reach out to them also to say, hey, I'm not sure which one of these I should go for. Can you help me figure that out? Do you know who I should talk to? Their staff people can call us, can call Secretary Trusty, can refer you to the right places and help you with that. And I also think too, if you have a relationship with them or can develop a relationship with your lawmakers and be on good terms, you can ask them also to support you in your application. Again, the worst people can say is no. But ask your lawmakers, ask your church groups, ask all those types of places to kind of beef up your application and show, why you really deserve this chance at redemption. And also things, I see people, don't often think of, sometimes things like, copies of your pay stubs, copies of all the certificates of things that you did while you were in prison out, counseling, letter from your job, a packet about you as a person. Like you do have to do your essay, but also you could include like a biosocial almost mitigation packet that you make, maybe with the help of your family or your community, to say, this is who I am, this is who I've become, look at this picture of me now. Because remember, the people reading it don't know you. So you really want to get across that picture of who you are now and bring that to life, however you can. Celeste, have you ever seen anybody submit a video? Would it be possible? I'm just riffing here, but would it be possible to submit a video with it?
No, it's funny. I actually asked the same question. I know we get photos from folks. And so I know and honestly, when I see those, it just touches my heart. So thank you for sending those. I'll have to get back to you to see if videos are able to be submitted. I will get back to you because I had that question earlier and I'm not sure if I actually got an answer to it, but we do see photos and things like that as well. I know also a lot of folks have written books or been published or have written op-eds while they're incarcerated, right? Those types of things are so impressive. So please make sure you include those types of things as well. If you're doing a mentoring program and you're helping, youth, include those types of things as well.
Absolutely. And that is something I was practicing in federal court prior to joining FAMM, and that was something that was really starting to be done more in cases, was like mitigation videos at sentencing. And so this isn't a sentencing, it's a different procedure. I understand there's a ton of cases pending, but that would be something really interesting. And in the meanwhile, if not videos, right? Yeah, just like Celeste said, picture of your family, picture of you with your children, picture of you in your community, anything that brings you to life, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. So that's a great tip and way to think about it. Creatively bring your application to life. Is there, to submit it, do you submit your application online? Do you mail it in?
So you can mail it to the board at our address, which is 333 Market Street in Harrisburg, 15th floor. You can also email it to us, make sure it's signed and all of those things, but you can email it to us. It's 2022, so that's fine at this point. If your loved one is incarcerated, they should be able to access the application through their facility. They can ask their counselor, they can ask a staff member. They should be able to access the new application through their facility as well. But again, folks who are home, please make sure you go to our website. I know a lot of our lawmakers also have these applications available in their offices and have folks who are dedicated in their offices to helping their constituents apply. So please reach out to your lawmaker. Hey, see where they stand on second chances while we're talking about it, but also see if they are willing to help you or if they have applications available as well if you need help.
Absolutely. And if you need, if you need help talking about how to interface with your lawmakers, obviously the lawmakers that are with us today, Senator Street and Councilmember Bass, are very approachable, accessible, take pride in being accessible. That may not be true for every single lawmaker in Pennsylvania, but if you need some help figuring out how to bridge that gap, if these aren't your lawmakers or you're not sure, you've never done it, we do have a family call the first Thursday of every month at 6 p.m. on Zoom, and not the one in April, but the one in May, which will be, let me just take a look at the date. The one in May will be May 5th, save the date, is going to be about a 101 course on how to interface with your lawmakers. So whether it's to ask them to support legislation, to do something like this, you can call, you can email, you can ask for a meeting, but we're just going to break down what that is like. So if you want some additional support, just make sure that you're on FAMM emails, and you're welcome to come to that May family call. So I send my application in. Great. It's done. One additional tip, I'm sorry, I just forgot that I want to throw out for folks is, I have known people who literally exhausted the programming in the GOC. Like over the course of 20 years, they did every single program that was ever offered to them. And we have people inside and outside who do that, right? Who take advantage of every opportunity and are doing this amazing, education and work with that education. My point is that can result in a stack like this big, right, of certificates and all kinds of things. And so one thing I know in my own life in every area is you want to make it as easy as possible for the people reading what you send in. So do the application, do it exactly as they say, follow the directions, but you also want to make sure, like, if you are one of those people or your loved one has so much amazing information that you want to get across, you're going to want to probably have like a table of contents. You're going to want to mark it either as, exhibit A, exhibit B, or like, number 1, number 2, number 3. But you want to make it as easy for, Secretary Trusty and her staff, but also the individual board members to go through that and not just see a stack this big and be, feel overwhelmed. And again, that's their job. They all take it extremely seriously. I believe that they review everything that's sent to them for sure, but it also can only help you to make it as easy as possible for them. So don't forget that organizational process piece can also really help too. Because I think people do forget that and think like they're going to go through it and organize 500 pages. And I think that's tough, right? Celeste, is there anything else you would say on that, or any way you like to see it done?
So yeah, when you're doing it, my wonderful admin Pam is on. Hello, Pam. She reminded me whenever you're sending your application in, if you do have 500 pages, don't bind it because we need to be able to scan them. So for our purposes, when you do send in a large packet, just send it in as regular paper so you can scan it and don't bind it. Thank you, Pam, for that reminder. But no, I think that's great, right? We all know how important storytelling is, right? You know, FAMM, that's one of the big things they do. That's one of the wonderful things you do so well is storytelling. And we've seen success through being able to paint a picture of who a person is versus just what people see on paper, right? And we all know that we're all so much more than what somebody would say about us on paper, about what we've accomplished or what we haven't accomplished. So really think of this as your opportunity to show, you know, why you are looking for clemency, why you're an incredible, candidate for clemency. The board asks that, right? Say why. Say why you want to be able to go and volunteer with your child, or you want to go back to school and advance your opportunities to help care for your family or help give back to the community, and why you're such an asset to the community. It's so important. And we all know that we all have incredible attributes and incredible values, but we have to make sure that we're conveying that to the board, right? So definitely think about that. In the optional personal statement portion, definitely think about that. How would you want the board to see you, right? Obviously, be honest. They are able to see all of the things that you're asking about for clemency for, so you want to make sure you're honest about things. But really make sure that you're honest about everything. Say, look, I might have done this, I might have caused this harm, but look at what I've been able to do now at this second chance. And a pardon or a commutation would really mean the world to me, my family, and my community.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you. That's really helpful. Because it's easy sometimes to get, we're all really focused on the end goal and the relief that we're trying to get for our loved ones, ourselves, our friends. But just knowing about those things, focusing on our storytelling, trying to really make the application as strong as we can to show the true human being is so important. So, okay, so I send my application in. I'm going to get that letter from your office that says, okay, we received it. Yes. I know you are working diligently to deal along with DOC with the backlog of applications. I've spoken to you, I've spoken to DOC. I've been extremely impressed. And just for everyone listening, I would tell you the truth. I've been very impressed by how everybody involved is really trying to deal with the backlog in a very thoughtful, respectful way. And just like everywhere else, everyone could use more resources, more staff. What is the average time if I send in my application until I get that letter that says I'm officially filed?
Oh, I hate having to answer this question, Maria, and I'm so sorry for everyone, but I have to say it has gotten better, right? We really have been doing things to try to address processes and procedures and trying to make things more streamlined so that by the time you send it in until filing, we're trying to make it as fast as possible. The average right now, it's taking around 14 to 24 months to actually get filed once you send your application in. But I promise you, we are working so hard every single day to try to reduce that amount of time. As you mentioned, our partners at DOC are so committed to this. We're on meetings with them constantly, and we're trying to brainstorm together, trying to find ways with DOC, with OVA, with all of our partners in this process to make things quicker, easier, more streamlined, more modern, right? So that everybody involved is able to make this better for all of our applicants. It really is incredible. The teams that people have put together, they care about making this happen, right? They care about making sure the applications are done well. And the folks at DOC care so much about this, and they're an incredible partner in this process. So, we're doing the best we can to try to make it better. One of the things would be very helpful would be to talk to your lawmakers and say, look, clemency is awesome, right? We got to invest in clemency. We have to make sure that we're doing the best we can to advance second chances through clemency. But what about some other options, right? What about trying to find some legislative ways, some legislative mechanisms to relieve the burden, right? That we have so many people in prison, right? And so many people over sentence. And then we've got this teeny weeny little agency to help rectify some of that, right? And so if we were able to create some other mechanisms like, relief for people who are old, relief for people who are sick, and relief for people who have just been serving these sentences who, again, no longer need to be in prison, that would make it so much easier for folks because clemency wouldn't have to be the only option for people. People could apply to get relief through other mechanisms as well.
100%. And for folks who don't know, FAMM is working on all of that. We have written a lot of bills, partnered very closely with lawmakers to write meaningful bills that they want. And we are working with people across the aisle in every party on this, just trying to get relief. And so again, medical parole, geriatric parole, ending automatic life without parole, we are working on all of those buckets along with expanding clemency because Governor Wolf has granted more for lifers than the previous several governors combined. Having said that, it still is because of the bottlenecks of the process, slow process, political process, it still is like winning the lottery a little bit to actually get a commutation, particularly if you're a lifer. I think your odds are a little better than winning the lottery, but it's not like it is happening every single day. So we do need more options. Celeste is absolutely right about that. Okay, so now real quick, I want to go back to the 14 to 24 months and thank you. We understand that you just took office in January and you're doing everything that you can.
Right.
So thank you so much. Is that the same if you're applying for, a pardon from the street as if you're applying for a commutation from DOC? Is that 14 to 24 months like regardless, or does it change? Is there any meaningful difference if you're in prison or not in prison?
Yeah, it still takes a while, right? So unfortunately, that's just the way it is, right? But again, we are doing everything we can. And I promise you, we're going to have some really exciting things that we are going to be able to share with you about some of the work that has been done over the last few years under, Governor Wolf and Chair Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, and with some incredible, partners in this process. So we really are excited about some of the changes that we've been able to make and some of the changes that we are working on. They're very exciting because again, our goal, even though it kills us to have to tell people it does take so long, right?
No, we'd rather have honesty. So we appreciate that.
Our goal remains the same, right? Which is to get as many people to the board, to the governor as possible. And so even if it does take a while, and even if it's frustrating to hear those answers from us, know that every single day, that's what we're doing. At work, at DOC, at the Board of Pardons, at OVA, we are working so hard to try to find ways to make this easier, make it more transparent, make it better, and make it quicker for everybody.
Thank you. So they, and again, I want to say for every family I've ever spoken to and for my own family, we definitely would rather have the truth. So thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. And I do know that you are working really hard on it. So I'm not going to if I'm the applicant, I'm not going to get my interview, right? Where if I'm applying for a pardon from home, I'm going to do an interview with parole staff via phone, maybe in person. If I'm in prison, I'm going to have my staffing in prison and interviews in prison to see, how folks are, whether they're recommending me or not. That process isn't going to start till I'm officially filed. Is that right?
Correct. That's
okay,
correct.
Gotcha.
And I think that's where a lot of folks get confused, is that when they get that initial letter saying we received your application, I think folks think that means that they're filed and they want to know when their staffing is going to happen or when parole is going to interview them. And so we really want to just make sure that we're clear that means that we've received your application, and we wanted to let you know that your application has been received, but you will get a second letter when it's officially filed, which does take, unfortunately, just a little bit of time.
Yeah, thank you. One thing I know is that, kind of like when somebody's up for parole, and I know that's not what we're talking about, even though it is parole agency staff that does these interviews, but there's not a lot of prep it's kind of like a black box when you go up for parole or you do this interview for pardons or commutations. People don't know what to expect. They're not prepared, you know, and I don't know, is it, you know, is it like an interrogation? Is it a gotcha? Is it a meaningful, you know, respectful conversation? Like, do you have anything that you can tell us about what that interview is like?
Sure. Certainly not a gotcha, you know. The board's going to ask questions that they want to know. My biggest suggestion and piece of advice for people going through this process is be as honest as possible when you're going before the board. The board values and respects honesty, and this is your chance, right? So many people feel like there is a stigma attached to having a criminal record, right? We want to understand that this is a space where we're trying to remove that stigma. And so that's what the board does, right? Every case they hear is about a person who has had interaction with the criminal legal system. Don't be ashamed. If you did something that was harmful, the only thing you can do is say, I did this and you know, I'm sorry, and here's what I've done since, and this is why I deserve clemency. So my biggest piece of advice would be as honest as possible with the board. If they ask you a question, answer it. Remember, they see, this is part of their job. They see a lot of people. They're probably going to know if you're being dishonest because they've also read most of your paperwork, all of your paperwork that has been submitted, which clearly outlines what you're asking for clemency for, right? So they already know what your case is and what it involved. So please just be honest, right? That's what the board wants to hear. They want you to be honest. And so that's definitely, I think, the most important thing is to be honest in those interviews, whether it's with parole or with the board, because they do value that so much.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I mean, that's the most that I've ever heard about the actual interview itself. So that's very, very helpful, I think, for folks to know. So then, okay, so I send it in, I get the letter that it's received, then I get the letter that it's filed, then someone's going to reach out to interview me, whether I'm in prison or at home. Along this whole time, if, you know, in that 18 to 20 or 14 to 24 months, you know, my situation has changed. I got a new amazing job. I had a new baby. I, you know, did this other thing. I can supplement my application at any time.
Yes.
I can always send that in. And then once those things are done, I'm going to go up for merit review. Merit review, you mentioned this already, is where those 5 board members will look at everything that's been submitted and they'll vote on whether to keep the application moving. If I have a life sentence or a violent type conviction, I'm going to need 3 votes to go forward. Everybody else is going to need 2 votes. Is that right?
If you are serving life or have a capital case, or if you're incarcerated for a crime of violence, you need 3 votes at merit review. Everybody else needs 2. Yep.
Okay, got it. And is the merit review public?
The merit review is public. However, applicants do not participate. Representatives do not participate. That's the point. It is a public thing, but it's a phone call. You can call in and listen. That's when the board members, basically the secretary, just reads off each name, each applicant, and then reads the vote for each and gets the vote for each board member there. And so I know folks sometimes want to say, oh, I need to, you know, do all these things for merit review. You can listen in for sure, but they're not going to ask you any questions. They won't ask your representative any questions. So that's why it's really important ahead of merit review to make sure that, as Maria said, if you have a new job, you have a new baby, you've done something incredible, send it to us. If your information changes, if your address changes, your email, your phone number, please send that to us in writing, because we need to be able to stay in touch with you and contact you throughout the process. So please make sure that you do let us know if there's any sort of updates to your contact information. But yeah, as like Maria said, please submit anything that is new since you applied, because you do have a lot of time in between applying and actually getting to see the board for merit review.
Awesome. I don't know, you know, there's probably no full answer to this, but I want to ask anyway, because I'm curious about it. But if somebody, you know, if somebody gets 5 votes, I get all 5 members to vote for me in the merit review, I'm gonna be feeling pretty confident. you know?
Mhm.
If I only get 2 votes to go forward or 3 votes to go forward, and I still get to go forward, but not everybody voted for me, should I expect that even though, my application is still proceeding, should I expect that I really have a chance? Or if I didn't get all the votes, am I kind of sunk even though I'm still going forward?
So remember, at the public hearing, if you're looking for a pardon, you only need 3 of the 5 board members to support you, right? So if you get all 5 board members at merit review, that's great. It still doesn't guarantee that you'll get, all 5 at a public hearing or even be successful at a public hearing. If you get 4 votes, right? 4 votes at merit review, still feel pretty good. But again, that doesn't mean you're going to get all the, votes at the public hearing. 3 votes too. You need 3 votes for a pardon to get through. So, for a pardon, you don't need all 5 votes. So still always feel confident, and also know that in between merit review and your public hearing, if you, complete anything else or you have more letters, send them to us too, because the board gets a new packet before the public hearing that has updated information. To make sure that you're sending us information between merit review and public hearing, do everything you can. If you have outstanding legal financial obligations, that's not going to stop the board from looking at your case, but it's suggested that you might want to try to see if your county can try to convert those fines and fees into community service, or maybe reduce those fines and fees, or even get on a payment plan and just pay $5 a month, $50 a month, whatever you can afford. And you know what? Send us the receipts, right? Send us the payment. We'll make sure that that gets in your file as well, and the board can consider that.
Awesome. Thank you. And I do want to clarify one thing. So for most people, they're not going to need all 5 votes, but for lifers, they are going to need all 5, right?
So so what happens is we always say 5 votes because there's 5 board members, but they need a unanimous vote. So if there is a 5th board member that's actually vacant and there are only 4 board members, or if a board member is absent during the vote and there's only 4 board members present and voting, 4 is enough. 4 is a quorum, and 4 is enough then to be a unanimous vote for a life or a capital case. And we've seen that happen, a few times. But so it is a unanimous vote. Usually there are 5 board members in attendance, so largely that is the case. But there are cases where 4, if there's a vacancy or if a board member is absent, is sufficient.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And just keep that in mind, folks. We're not delving into every single, this can be a very legally complex process. As you heard, Pennsylvania has sealing, we have expungements, we have commutations, we have pardons. All are slightly different. Some of them overlap a little bit. So this can be very complex. We're trying to just cover the basics today. But do remember that for merit review and public hearing, the requirements are heightened if you are serving a life sentence. And again, Pennsylvania has more people than the vast majority of states in the United States serving life sentences. So those heightened requirements and heightened vote requirements are going to apply to a lot of people. And that is something that FAMM is working to change. So, okay, so I get through merit review. My application is not shut down. I'm going to have notice of the public hearing printed in the local newspaper where the crime occurred. Your office handles that. Any victims or survivors in the case are notified. Anything about that step that you want folks listening to know?
I mean, look, OVA is an incredible partner in this process. I think that a lot of people assume that the Office of Victims Advocate is always going to be opposed to clemency, or is always going to fight on clemency. And I haven't found that to be the case. The OVA staff and team has been wonderful. And often we get folks who don't have a problem with clemency, or they'll even support the clemency of the person who harmed their life or harmed their family. We have a great example of, a victim who advocated for the freedom of the 2 people who ended up taking the life of her father. And, now they're home and they are still connected together. And it's a beautiful, beautiful story. And, the Office of Victims Advocate was a great partner in that. And so, of course, if harm has been caused to a family or to a person, they should be a part of this process. We are asking, people who are applying are asking to either be forgiven for something that they did that might have caused somebody harm, or to have a sentence reduced for something that might have caused somebody harm. And so it's only fair to make sure that the people who were caused harm also have an opportunity to present to the board their harm. It doesn't, always mean that they're going to oppose clemency. It can be it's a very, very trying and emotional process for everybody involved. And even when the victim side is an extremely emotional testimony, that doesn't necessarily mean that the person who is applying for clemency is not going to get it. And so, we always want to make sure that we are honoring the lives that have been lost, or honoring the lives that have been harmed through this process. As much as I'm an advocate for second chances for as many people as possible, we still do have to recognize that there has been harm caused. But the wonderful thing is, when people are coming home, they bear that burden. They know they caused harm, and they come home and they do absolutely everything to try to repair that harm as best as they can. So it's, I love it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So if I make it this far, I'm now going to a public hearing where people supporting and opposing my application for my pardon or commutation both sides are going to get 15 minutes to make their case. It's 30 minutes if it's a death penalty case, but typically I'm going to have 15 minutes. The other side is going to have 15 minutes. Board of Pardons members can ask questions. And the victims or survivors in the case may opt to provide input rather than, publicly testify. I have a question first, and then I want to open up to anything you want folks to know. But I have a question about, do those presentations make a difference? Like, we know we have seen, cases of emotional testimony from both sides. Do the for and against presentations change votes or change the discussion? Is it meaningfully considered by the board members?
So guess what? I haven't done my first public hearing yet. I'll have to answer you after April 29th because I haven't had my first public hearing yet. And so, I have not been in an executive session with board members after that testimony. And so I'll have to report back on that. But honestly, when you think about it, the board gets these packets of information plenty of time beforehand, right? What the board is doing is they're considering who a person is now, and would they be a great candidate to return to society to make it a better and stronger place, right? Obviously, the board is going to internalize what any victim's opposition is, but often they do see that before, right? Often victims will submit in writing beforehand, a supporter submit in writing beforehand. This is an emotional situation, right? Often we are dealing with people who have lost people that they love, right? And people who have taken people from other people. And, it's a very, very difficult and emotional situation. So, everybody understands that and everybody takes it extremely seriously. But at the same time, what the board is going to be looking at is, what has this person accomplished since that harm that they caused? What have they done since? What does their reentry support look like? When they go home, can we trust and believe that they're going to make Pennsylvania's community stronger and repair kind of those tears in the fabric of society that they created? And what we've seen is, yes, we have seen that those tears in the fabric of society that they created through that harm, they're coming home and they're making those tears stronger, right? They are focusing on those holes that they made and reinforcing them with mentorship and presence and leadership. And now we're stronger because of it, right? And so I know I could go on and on about how strong and how wonderful they are, but that's what the board is going to obviously look for is, they know that this person caused harm largely, with commutation specifically. They know that. They expect to hear emotional testimony from the people who have been harmed. But they're looking at, who would be an incredible candidate to come home and make our community stronger.
That was really beautifully put. Thank you. And I do think that's another thing I'm sure a lot of folks on this call have thought about in their applications or their loved ones' applications, but particularly for commutation, you might know, oh, my loved one is going to come home and, we have like 8 people in the community who would give him a great job. Well, is that in writing in their commutation application? That is a huge thing to know that someone has a job. Again, if they're able to work and not too old or too sick, or whatever other circumstances that they can't work. But if they are, to know that they have a job the day that they come home, that is a good job. That is, I think that speaks a lot, to know exactly what that plan is of where they're going to live, who's going to live there. I mean, honestly, sometimes I've even included like, this is what the house looks like. This is, a picture of the outside of a house. This is his room waiting for him. That kind of thing. So again, just like think creatively, and particularly with those nuts and bolts of where they're going to live, what the job's going to be, who they're going to be around every day. That is, I think, important to show to the board, because they have to be able to visualize that day that they come home and that it's safe and that it's okay. So be thinking about that too. So, okay, we're running close on time here. I get all the way through. We're hoping I get the votes. I get the votes. The board gives me the votes, whether it's a unanimous vote if I'm a lifer or serving time for a violent conviction, or a majority if I'm not a lifer or serving time for a violent conviction.
Quickly, just to clarify, the unanimous is only for lifers or capital cases at public hearing.
Yep.
If you're serving, if you're incarcerated for a violent offense at a public hearing, you still need just the 3 votes.
Perfect.
At public
Thank
hearing.
You.
Yes.
I'm sorry I misspoke on that. Thank you so much. So
no confusion.
I get the votes. I go forward. I'm still not done. We have another step. Now it has to go to the governor's office. Does the governor usually grant them? Like, should we really expect that the governor wouldn't grant one that was done by the board? Or is that really a question of whether the governor would grant it?
So I apologize for my dog, who apparently had something to say, a comment on that question. So if anybody heard her growling in the background, that's why. The governor largely does support and grant the suggestions from the board. Again, there are chances that the governor won't, but largely the governor does follow those recommendations. At least Governor Wolf, can't speak for any future administrations. Governor Wolf largely does follow those recommendations from the board. There are times where he has not, for his own reasons, but largely he does.
Okay, that's great to know. Thank you. So if the governor signs it, first of all, if I do get granted at a public hearing, roughly, how long is it going to take for the governor to make a decision?
So the Board of Pardons does not have jurisdiction over the governor. So we can't say, Governor, hey, act right away. That's really up to the governor. So that's something that, we can't say, but the governor has actually been acting quite quickly recently. So after a public hearing, the Board of Pardons staff has to actually prepare some stuff to go up to the governor. So the governor has everything that, in the governor's office, that they need in order to review those cases. So that does take a little bit of time. However, we are working on making sure that those things are happening quick. I know last time it went extremely quick. So thank you, Pam, on the call for all of that work to get those up to OGC quicker. But the governor has been acting fairly quickly on these, once he does get them. So, and then once the governor acts, our office gets to work and we get these letters and these charters out as soon as possible, because it is just so beautiful, again, to see these pieces of paper with people's names on it saying you have been fully pardoned or your sentence has been commuted, and seeing some of these familiar names on them and knowing that their lives are about to be forever changed is just incredible.
And that is needed, that is needed to be sent out for me to actually get the pardon or to get out of prison.
So we let, as soon as the governor acts, we do let DOC know, right? So then DOC goes and they let the people know that the governor acted, and then we do get those things out as soon as possible. But we let the Department of Corrections know ahead of time, so they're not waiting for our snail mail with the charters in them. But they let the folks know, we let them know as soon as the governor acts.
And do folks, if they are in prison, do they get out then fairly quickly from the time that the governor signs it?
Well, I think the process is different. I know during COVID, folks were getting out pretty quickly, but lifers are different than a min-max commutation process. And so if you're a lifer, you do get out a little bit quicker because you see parole at a different time. Min-max commutation, I believe you see parole before you get out. And so those, I believe, take a little bit longer to process. But folks, I believe, get out fairly quickly, or as quickly as they're able to get out, because, hey, once the governor acts, I mean, governor's acted, right? I don't think the department wants to continue to keep them in there.
Right, absolutely. So I'm going to screen share really, really quick. I put the link for this in the chat. Can everybody see it?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So this is an explainer. It's just a one-page FAMM explains commutation in Pennsylvania, and it literally lays out all the steps that we just talked about. It talks about why commutations have historically been difficult to get in Pennsylvania. And this is on our website, and I also put the link in the chat. I have printed this out and sent this to a lot of people, a lot of families. Feel free to send that to your loved one inside, share it, send it on social media. Again, we are breaking down the process. It's always more complex in real life, but that is the basic steps that we covered today. And that is focused on commutation. But those steps, again, are pretty much the same, whether it's a pardon or a commutation. They're all clemency. So couple questions, and then we're going to dive into the official Q&A, but these are questions that I had from folks beforehand. Do I have to exhaust all of my appeals before I can apply for clemency of any kind?
So if you have an open appeal, if you have open something in the courts, it is suggested that you resolve that before you would apply for clemency. The Board of Pardons views clemency as the ultimate kind of relief. And if you have an opportunity for relief within the courts, the board would suggest likely that you would want to go through the courts for that relief.
Okay, and then can you just briefly cover what that expedited program is for marijuana? Is there anything different in the process for that? Do I need to do anything different up front if that's me that's applying for that?
Sure, yeah, on the application, we say check, the type of clemency that you're looking for. So the expedited nonviolent marijuana program has been, it's extremely successful, right? It's silly that anyone has a record for nonviolent weed offenses, but we do. And we see so many new arrests for low-level weed charges every single year. But the governor has been able to grant over 250 pardons through the expedited nonviolent marijuana program. Hopefully we see a lot more before Governor Wolf gets out of office. But that's huge, right? We have heard stories of people who have had ridiculous, silly weed charges on their record, and they can't take their daughter to the zoo when they're in kindergarten because, they've got this charge from 30 years ago, or they're unable to get a license of some sort, a professional license, because they have a charge on their record that is so silly. I can drive within 10 miles of my house and there's probably 15 marijuana dispensaries, medical marijuana dispensaries that anybody can go in if you have a card. People are still getting arrested for having marijuana for personal use. And so the expedited marijuana program, it does allow folks to go through a little bit quicker because we don't need as much information from our partner agencies for that. So there have been over 250 of those granted by Governor Wolf so far.
That's amazing. Good to know. Thank you so much. So, all right, I'm going to turn to the questions in the Q&A. And I know there were a lot of questions in the chat. If folks can retype those in the Q&A, that's a little easier. If you're not able to, or you can't navigate to the Q&A button, or you don't see that at the bottom, I will go through the chat. But if you have a question, if you can put it in the Q&A, that would be great. So one of the questions that we have is somebody had been working with the previous secretary, Brandon Flood, but he is no longer there. We haven't heard anything. We sent a message. We don't know what to do. How should people, get in touch with your staff, Celeste? Should they email? Should they call?
Yeah, I'll put my email in the chat. You can email me. You can call our office. We're very helpful. Leadership change at the agency has not stopped a beat. We're doing exactly what we've been doing so far. Nothing has changed. Our work is still going on, and you can still reach out to the office. I will put my email, not even typing, I'll put my work email in the chat. You can feel free to email me if you have any sort of questions. And again, a lot of the questions that you might have, the answers might be found on our website. And so definitely check out our website. We're constantly updating it with new statistics and with new information. And one other thing I do want to quickly mention before I forget, April is Second Chance Month. So we're going to be doing as many possible things to try to highlight Second Chance Month and people who have been given second chances in the Commonwealth during April. So if you in your community see a second chance event coming up, email me. If I'm able, I would love to attend, right? If you would like to have one, a pardon clinic at your church, at your community center, please reach out. We can partner with legal aid, we can partner with FAMM, we can partner with lawmakers. We can do anything that we can to really highlight second chances and the importance of second chances in April. I know the governor's made a proclamation. I know the president's made a proclamation. So let's do everything we can. Everyone on this call, please do everything you can during April to highlight your loved ones. If they're incarcerated, highlight your own stories. If you're going through this process or if you've been impacted, and share if you've gotten clemency of some sort, share your story with us. Please share your story with people on social media. April is such an incredible opportunity to really shout from the rooftops how incredible second chances are, and also how awful Pennsylvania is at giving them. So great opportunities. Please, every actions, and look, my inbox is full of people from FAMM emailing me that wonderful action about expanding clemency, and I see them all, right? I see them all. My mom even emailed me, from through the FAMM. I was like, Mom, it's me, right? You could just text me, but it's, it really is a wonderful thing. And as someone who used to be in Maria's position, I have to say it's really, really great to see all of the folks still doing all of this wonderful advocacy work at FAMM to try to encourage the board and encourage the legislators to expand second chances.
Awesome. We just put the link for that action in the chat. So if you want to email Celeste, the governor, your lawmaker saying, hey, we really need to expand clemency, please do that. I also put the link in the chat for the letter that we sent to Governor Wolf a few weeks ago, asking him to really invest in the infrastructure of clemency, to give Celeste the resources that she and her staff need to be able to deal with, the many, many applications that we need to get through and not rush through and do very thoughtfully. So take a look at that. I do, before we turn to the rest of the questions, we're still good on time, we're going to get to them, but I do want to invite Councilwoman Bass and Senator Street that if they do have any questions, for us or things that they've heard from their constituents, please feel free to pop back on at any time if you're able and ask us those questions. Okay, so turning back to the questions. Okay, based on BOP's statistics page, there are 96 applications which were sent to the governor from the December 2021 open hearings. Has there been any updates or actions taken in regard to those applications?
We'll have to ask the governor. So again, Board of Pardons doesn't have jurisdiction over the governor, right? So we can't tell the governor to look any faster. We can't say, hey, will you sign faster? Advocates can, right? But we're doing the absolute best we can. I'm not sure. So the statistics are a little hard because sometimes, again, if folks are, the Act 59, which is a new law, makes it so that some of the folks who had been heard at the later sessions are not actually able to have a public hearing yet. And so some of the statistics seem a little bit off and a little bit weird, but we can't ask the governor to go any faster, so that's kind of the answer there. I'm sure I used to call all the time and ask them to go faster, so advocates, feel free.
And you had mentioned OGC, that's the Office of the General Counsel. That's basically the governor's team of lawyers who are also independently reviewing the applications and, working with the governor as to whether to sign them.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and they're an incredibly dedicated team as well. We're on meetings with them all the time. Incredibly dedicated and also just brilliant people who really help prepare the governor to help make these decisions. So. Okay. We've got a good group of people working on this.
That's great. Thank you. Question also, is there a specific time frame that someone must be incarcerated before applying for any form of clemency?
No, anybody can apply for clemency anytime. I will then say that the board does look at how long you've served in relation to your offense, your conviction, and the overall sentence. So if you were sentenced to life without parole in 2019 and you're applying for clemency, you will likely not get it. I will just, be honest there, because they would think that a couple years in prison after a life without parole sentence wouldn't be sufficient to show that you are able to return to society successfully. So the board does look at those types of things whenever, yes. So anybody can apply. We're not going to say that folks can't apply, but be understanding that we do have limited resources as an agency. So is it better to apply if you've served 3 years of a life sentence and have us go through all of this work and have all of our agencies do all of this work, knowing that you're not going to get through yet? Or is it better to put in some incredible work for a little bit longer, let some other folks who have already put in that work serve the 20, 30, 40 years, let them go through let them get processed first, and then, kind of build up your situation so that whenever you can apply, you'll be more successful. So yes, in short, no, anybody can apply, whether you're incarcerated or not, for any time, but your likelihood of success is much lower if you've only served a smidge of your sentence.
Right. No, that's very helpful. So we have someone asking, and I've had this question before, somebody has a conviction, they've moved on, they're now in a position of some authority, and they might have, certain types of employment badges or work in institutions and halls of power. Is it appropriate to send in, copies of things like that? Their work ID showing where they work, or, like pay stubs or something like that to show where they're at now. Is that appropriate to include?
Yeah, honestly, you want to show who you are, because this is paper, right? It's paper. So think of this as an opportunity to say, how can I show 5 people who probably have never met me, have no idea who I am? How can I best demonstrate who Celeste Trusty is to 5 strangers who actually have my life in their hands, right? What would I want them to know? And also know that each of them come from a different background. Each of them think a different way, right? Right now we have a Lieutenant Governor Fetterman, who is a loud advocate for second chances, right? He will get up anywhere and yell about how important second chances is, right? In the Lieutenant Governor's office, we have 2 people who have served life without parole and are now home after commutation, who work as commutation specialists in the Lieutenant Governor's office, right? So how he's gonna feel, largely, okay? Then you have the Attorney General. Understand that he's an Attorney General as a role. So know that he might think differently from how the Lieutenant Governor might feel. Then you have a corrections expert who has come up through corrections, right? He might look at things a little bit differently as well. A doctor of psychiatry is also going to look at things differently from someone who doesn't have that background of seeing people in a medical setting, right?
Yep.
Then you have the victim representative, who herself has been impacted by crime, right? Who is also an attorney. And so knowing that her role as the victim representative is also going to be represented too. So you have to convince 5 people, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, sometimes 5, that you are not a piece of paper. You are not a conviction. You are a whole person. So I think you talked earlier about having this robust, holistic application. Show who you are. If you've got a great option for employment, you're doing something incredible, show the board, send whatever that is, send, those certificates. All of those things are extremely important in kind of creating and like adding color to, you know, a black and white piece of paper that they're going to be staring at hundreds of.
Absolutely. And that actually jogged my memory on something I wanted to tell folks that I learned from DOC, which was, you know, I've talked to a lot of families and people who are aware that, you know, DOC, the superintendent, Secretary Little at the, you know, who's the head of DOC are going to have input. They're going to have a vote. But something that we hear that a lot of people don't understand is that actually everybody around you in the prison is also going to have a vote, from, you know, housing, to your work placement, to food, to like all the different departments are all going to give input that are going, people that you're around every day. And then that's going to inform how, you know, the unit manager, the superintendent vote. And then obviously that's going to matter right all the way up to what the secretary recommends, which is obviously going to be important, especially I'm sure to the corrections expert, but also all of the board members. So just to be aware from the beginning of folks' time, you know, that just like my mama always said, everything counts. Unfortunately, it does. And we always have to be mindful of that.
Yes, it's the truth. But yeah, DOC, they do give input, you know, the staff, they give input, and the board really does look at that because those are the people who see the applicants who are incarcerated every day, right? They're the ones who say, oh, you know, they're well behaved, or, you know, they're a great worker, or, you know, they'd be an incredible candidate to come home. So those relationships are really important too, and they do matter to the board.
Absolutely. So, okay, can a parent, moving to another question, we've got about 8 minutes left. We'll try to get through these. Can a parent apply for their incarcerated child who is autistic or intellectually disabled and may not be able to comprehend the process?
So here's the thing. We get a lot of folks who want to apply on behalf of others. We do need the people who are applying to actually apply, right? However, in this type of situation, this is one reason why we made the personal statement portion optional on the new application, because there are some people who are just unable to provide a personal statement or feel as though the personal statement wouldn't be helpful. And so that's an optional thing. Also, if your loved one is incarcerated, ask them to ask their counselor to help as well. One thing you can do is you can be listed as an interested party for your son's application. And that way you're able to talk to us. Once we have that application, you're able to talk to us and get information on behalf of your son. Then you can really help him go through that process.
Celeste, what about the portion where you can have a representative
Yes.
to help you fill out the application? Does that apply?
So usually incarcerated folks, usually the representative is a DOC representative. And usually it's Johnny Johnson, and he's so great. He really is so great. So usually that's what happens, where a representative from DOC is the one who represents them through the process. We do see folks who have outside DOC representation as well. But usually we do see largely the DOC as the representative for folks who are incarcerated.
Okay, thank you. And you sort of answered this, but I want to ask this question. Can you talk about, this is from someone attending, can you talk about what steps to take for commutation for a loved one? If the person has already applied for commutation behind bars, who can you work with to follow up on their case?
Yes. So if you are listed, again, if you are listed as an interested party or a representative, we can give you information. Another thing is you can have your loved one reach out to us. George Trudell in the Lieutenant Governor's office has the GTL, Connect Network, and he's in touch with people all the time. We get letters at BOP all the time. People just asking us what's going on, if they can have a status update. And then usually instead of sending a letter back, I'll just say, hey, George, can you respond to this person via email? And they'll just send an email just to give them updates. So that's one way. They can send us a letter in the mail. They can ask their counselor to call us also. And again, if you are a representative or if you're listed as an interested party, we're able to give you some information as well. But usually email is like super easy. So we'll get a letter from folks I'll get the letter and I'll just ask George to respond, and then people can get a response pretty quickly.
Awesome. Okay. Does every applicant get an interview?
No. So basically, if you're applying and you're incarcerated, right, you're going to largely get those interviews. And then so probation and parole handles the interviews for people who are applying for the pardons. So largely you will get an interview. What I would say is prepare to have an interview. There are cases where you might not need one, but largely prepare to have an interview.
Thank you. So what about creating a scoring system for victims and survivors' families? Some families will never forgive. There are others who are begging to let the insider have mercy. And this is a question I'm reading. We need to give weight to the surviving family. Sometimes it feels like too much weight is given. Same with DAs. And I do know from personal experience, and something FAMM always says is there is no group, no group that is a monolith. So you have people of every stripe and opinion in every group, whether it's folks with loved ones inside, whether it's victims and survivors, whether it's DAs, judges, whoever. Any comment on that question?
So can you repeat the beginning of the question again?
Yep. How about creating some type of scoring system for victims' families? There are some who will never forgive, others are begging for mercy. We do need to give weight, but sometimes it feels like too much is given.
So the victim's family is able to weigh in, right? So any sort of surviving victims, OVA reaches out and says, do you want to weigh in? Often they don't. Often they do. And they have every right to do that. It ranges, right? Some victims have such passionate hatred and, continued hatred for what happened. And that's allowed, and that's, perfectly natural. We're never going to know how a victim's going to react, but that's why we allow them the space to participate. And they also can participate not in person. Some folks don't feel comfortable or don't feel that they can get through an in-person testimony because it is too difficult. And so they submit, in writing. But, I'm not sure if there's a value in creating a scoring system, because no matter what, the victims' families and the survivors are always going to have the opportunity to weigh in, and they should. I don't believe that should change at all. But they're often, they're guided very well by the people through Office of Victims Advocate. They are very caring, and they try to make this, at least lessen the trauma, I guess, for folks going through. And so if they want to speak and they want to let everything out, they're more than welcome to. But again, we do see people testifying on behalf of the people who are applying.
Sure, thank you. And something just as a side note, something that FAMM is working on really closely with a lot of lawmakers and with the Office of the Victim Advocate and with other victims and survivors groups is how to, reinvest some of the cost savings for medical and geriatric parole, expanded clemency. This incarceration forever and ever and ever costs taxpayers, obviously harms families, and also costs taxpayers. I mean, the DOC budget is $2.6 billion a year. So how can we reinvest some of that into real meaningful community level trauma recovery? And not to say that can't, nothing will ever replace the loved ones that I've personally lost. I'm sure that's true for everybody out there. At the same time, if folks of every stripe in every area of Pennsylvania have access to trauma recovery tools, counseling to deal with all the different ways that people in Pennsylvania are harmed and traumatized, both by being the direct victims or survivors of crime, by losing their child, to crime, or never seeing them again due to incarceration. We need that at the front end. And so we're working very closely to figure out how to do that. Not saying it fixes any of this today or that it should. As Celeste said, everybody is entitled to their opinion. They absolutely deserve that. At the same time, would the situation be different if we had more prevention and for both, for everybody involved had access to trauma recovery services really, really early on? So we are focused on that. Okay, almost done. Does victim opposition, actual participation in the crime, trump who you are today, in your opinion, for the board? Does that trump your exemplary record through decades of incarceration? You know, if everything looks great and you are, you know, model everything, but you have victim opposition and you did participate in a crime 20, 30, 40 years ago, are you going to lose? Does that trump it? Do you have a chance?
You still have a chance. We have seen, and I am the biggest advocate for second chances. I love second chances. I go into prisons and I just, you know, I want everyone to be able to have that second chance. And I've also been brought to tears by victim testimony, right? You have to understand that it's a terrible situation for everyone, right? For everyone involved. But the board does look at everything. The board knows they're probably going to hear opposition, right? They're going to hear opposition. It's largely because a person that they love has lost their lives. That's major. But that doesn't trump what the board is looking at to see whether you would be able to come home. They know the victim feels pain from what was caused by that original harm, right? That pain will not go away. That pain stays and it lingers, and they know that. But that opportunity for the victim to say the things that they need to say, that does not trump who a person is or an applicant is. They expect to hear opposition. They expect to hear opposition. It's a part of the process. But we've seen a lot of people successful through the process who have had some pretty loud victim opposition, which is recognized and which is understood and welcomed. And then they are cared for through OVA afterward. But those people who have been able to come through successfully have still been able to come home. They feel the pain that they caused the victim. And then they live their lives in order to cause, you know, to bring honor to the people that they have caused harm to.
Great point. So I think we're almost the last question. Once someone has been pardoned, is their record cleared from the state databases, or is there something further they must do? Will background checks no longer show their name?
So as we mentioned earlier, expungements and sealing and everything is separate, right? So what you can do is actually apply to have a pardoned offense expunged. And so you can do that as well. But they are separate processes. And I know we're running out of time. So if you go on bop.pa.gov, you can look. We actually have an expungement tab, you know, icon. Click on that. A clean slate icon. You can click on that. Takes you to all these different resources about what you want to do after you get a pardon in order to make sure that your record is clean.
Thank you so much. It's 2:33. We got through all the questions in the Q&A. This was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody, for staying on for this Q&A portion, because last time I felt really bad that we couldn't get to everybody. So I'm really glad that we built this in, and we'll keep this in mind for future presentations. This event today, it was recorded. It's going to be aired on Facebook on Sunday night, on FAMM's page, Senator Street's page, probably on Councilwoman Bass's page as well. And Secretary Trusty, we can talk about, if you want to cross post with yours as well, we can do that. And then it'll be put on FAMM's YouTube channel. It'll also be on the Senator's page as well. We'll post it all over social. And anybody can reach out to me at any time for resources on Clemency or the recording. I just put my email in the chat. So I want to thank Councilwoman Bass, Senator Street, Secretary Trusty for this fantastic presentation. We covered so much today. And I'm really, really happy with what we did today. So thank you so much. We appreciate you and have a great day. We'll see you all again soon.
Thank you for having me. Talk to you all soon.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.